welcome to Scrappy Loom Sewing. I'm JC Joellen, and today I'm going to show you how to make the quilt that's on the wall behind me here. I call it my cattywompus quilt, and the reason I named it that is because cattywompus, the definition of cattywompus is for things to be out of alignment or incorrectly arranged. And as you can see, the circles are out of alignment and they're incorrectly arranged. We got a blue with the black, a purple with the pink, black with the blue, that's a brown and a blue, black and a blue, and then so on and so forth. All different, prints together. And for this quilt, you would need 5 fabrics for the background. I use 4 prints and 1 solid, and then you need multiple prints for the circles. And the way I did it is I've got lights and medium lights in the background, and then I used dark fabrics for the circles because I don't want them to blend into the background. I want them to separate, be seen separately. I want them to pop off the background instead of blending into it. So you need those prints for your circles, you need the 5 prints for your background, and then you need 2 prints for your stashings. And let's get started. You will also need freezer paper. I use Reynolds. And you will need some starch. I use Heavy Finish Faultless. You need a little cup to put your starch in and a brush to brush it onto the fabric. And then I used a bowl to make my circles, but the circles are 7" in diameter. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with that, that means if you fold the circle in half equally, from one end to the other of the fold, it measures 7". So it's the width across the middle of the circle. It should be 7". Okay, let's get started. So each background block, which is a 4-patch, has 3 different fabrics in it. 2 fabrics repeat throughout every block. And for me it was this spotted gold, it's a gold metallic spot on this, looks like a paintbrush design print. And so this is the one I repeated in every block. You can see it in every block. And the fabric that I'm going to repeat, that you're going to repeat in the quilt, there's 2 in every 4-patch. And then there's a 3rd one and a 4th print in every block. So 2 5.5" blocks of the repeating print, and then 1 5.5" block of 2 other prints for every 4-patch. So let's get started. I've got my 5.5" blocks here. I'm already cut. And you just take the 2 repeating blocks, you put them in opposite corners. And then whatever 2 prints you're going to use in addition to that, go into the other 2 corners. So you'll have it like this. You sew this seam here and this seam here, and then you sew these 2 together so that you end up with a 4-patch. So let's do that. Using a 1/4" seam, to sew the blocks together. And when I was making the quilt, I just chain pieced. Okay, so I've got my 2 sections sewn together, and then I pressed the seam towards the print that does not repeat in the block. That way, when you put the 2 pieces together, the seams will nest and you'll get a real nice intersection. In the middle of your block. So then you just flip these 2 together, nest that seam. What I mean by that is you push those 2 seams together, they're facing opposite directions. You just peel that back a little bit. Make sure that they are right up against each other, and these are. And then you sew your long seam. Keep my hand on the block, applying a little bit of pressure. That way the seams don't shift. I mean, the pieces don't shift, and I end up with my seams not quite matching. And if you do that, usually they will come out just perfect. And this one did. And there you have it. 2 four patches now. You need 2 to make a block. It actually makes 2 blocks, but you need 2 to start with, because you're going to cut the circle in half and then shift to pieces. So I'm going to set these aside. What I would do if I were you is make all your 4 patches. In this particular quilt, there's 42 4 patches. So you make all your 4 patches, and stack up your 4 patches though, and set those aside, and then I'll show you how to make the circles. You'll take 2 pieces of freezer paper. And on the top layer, you would draw your circle. I do this before I press, because after you press, sometimes there's a few little bubbles in there, in the paper. So you may not be able to make your circle as accurately. So you draw your circle onto your freezer paper. You stack your freezer paper, and then press them together. This just makes a more durable template. And these are reusable. You can use them more than once. Now what I do is I make a number of these before I get started. And after it cools off, you peel it up. This isn't cool yet, but I'm going to go ahead and peel it up. And then you cut your circle out. What I do with my paper cutting scissors. When you cut your circle out, you want to be very careful to cut on the line and to make a smooth line, because when you use the template to make your shape, any jags or imperfections that you have cut out on your circle will show up on your applique. So the more perfect your template, the more perfect your applique is going to be. So I just take the time and I cut this out all the way around. You'll cut your whole circle out, and you end up with a template like this. And you'll cut your fabric out using your template. Use a template, press it onto your fabric, and then cut a circle out. You want to cut not right up against the line when you're cutting your fabric out. You want to cut like a 1/4 inch outside the line, 3/8 inch outside the line, whatever. But you want to leave a little space to fold over so that you will have a turn under. I did about 3/8 of an inch to a 1/2 inch in some sections, and that doesn't have to be perfect because the template is going to make it perfect for you. So then you take your circle that you've cut out. I'm going to use this one here. And you will have your template attached to it. I made a bunch of circles and stacked them up, and here they are here, because I'm going to make more of these. So I just made a bunch of circles at one time, and then I take a circle and a template, and you apply your template to your circle. Set it in the center of your circle. And like I said, it doesn't matter if this outer edge is not perfect all the way around, as long as you have enough of an edge to turn under. And you press your template to your fabric with a hot iron, no steam. Once it's attached real good, you will take your starch, you shake your starch, spray a little bit of it into your container, let your bubbles die down. Actually, you can use it with the bubbles too, but it saturates a little more quickly if you get the bubbles to die down. and just use the liquid. And then you'll paint along the edge with your starch. And you don't want to get it on your freezer paper. If you do, it's not the end of the world, but they last longer and give you a better applique shape if you don't wet the paper. I go all the way around. If you're new at this, you might want to do a little bit at a time so that your starch does not dry up before you get to it. But if it does, you can just re-wet it. However, if you can work fast enough, you can do it all the way around and you won't have to re-wet it. Now, once you've got it wet all the way around, you take your hot iron and you just press the edge over the template. Hold it for a few seconds. Move on to the next segment. Do this all the way around your circle. Until you've got your nice template shape. I love this method of making appliques. And it's really quite quick. You don't use steam. Like I said, you can use these templates over and over. I've used them, I don't know, 7 times sometimes or more, maybe even more than that. But you get at least 4 or 5 out of it easy. I get more than that out of it. And you just press all the way around like that. And see what a nice circle I've gotten there? And now just set that aside and let that cool off. I've already got a couple over here that I've done already that are cool. I've got me a blue one and a purple one. Still have the freezer paper attached. After it's cooled off, you just peel a little edge back and pull your applique out. And the edges will go right back down. And I just roll my edges back around. And see, perfect circles. So, next, we will take our background square. Once you make up all your circles, I just take a seat at the iron and just do them up. And then you would take one of your 4 patches. I always set the repeating print in the left corner when I'm looking at it. So I got it in the upper left and the bottom right is my repeating print. You want to do every block like this. And then I take one of my circles and I place it in the right lower block of the 4 patch. And I measure 3/4 inch away from the edge and place my circle right up against it. Right up against the ruler. And then I want to, that's from the right edge when I'm facing it. And then I'll do the same thing from the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll measure 3/4 inch from the right edge, pin it in place. And then I do the same thing at the bottom. 3/4 inch from the bottom edge. Make sure you've got it squared up. And then I shift my circle until it's just right up against the ruler at the 3/4 inch mark. 3/4 inch mark. And then I pin it there. Then I pin it all the way around, all the way around. So it doesn't shift on me when I sew. I don't use a lot of pins most of the time, but when I'm doing circles, I do, because I'm always afraid it's either going to stretch out or I'm going to shift it when I sew it. So I use quite a few pins when I do circles. I'm going to do 2 of them here so you can see how these blocks are done. Again, I'm going to set the circle towards the bottom right square in the 4 patch. Then you're going to measure a 1/4 inch away from the, 3/4 of an inch from the edge. Bring my circle up against the ruler. Pin it into place. And then do the same thing at the bottom. 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. Bring the circle up against the ruler. And pin it into place. Making sure that your turned under edge is turned under. And they really stay well. If you put enough starch on it, it really stays in place. It's not a problem at all. All right. After we've got it pinned into place, take it over to my sewing machine, and I am using what is called a blind hem stitch on my sewing machine. That's where it takes 2 straight stitches and then it zags to the left. If you don't have that, you can use a zigzag, or you can straight stitch all the way around it. But I just like the way this stitch looks. It does a tack stitch. It looks like a tack stitch, and I just like the effect of it. I lengthen mine and widen it just a little bit. And I would normally have matching thread in here. I match it to the circle. Do my other one. With the stitch I'm using, the straight stitch is just right up against the edge of the circle. You don't really see it, and then it zags over, and that's the stitch that you see. Sew around till my stitches meet. this down just to set my stitches. It's still warm. And after that, I take a ruler, long enough to cross my square. By the way, I don't think I said, but this ends up being an 11-inch square. 4-patch, unfinished. And by the time I put the circle in, cut it out, and sew it back together, you end up with a 10-inch square. So, I take my ruler and go diagonally across the square, through the center of the diagonal, right through the center of the point on both ends. It should meet. The ruler should. And I just cut this in half. And I'm cutting through the fabric that repeats. You want to do this every time, or you're going to come up with a different block. If you don't do that, if you cut the other way, you're going to end up with a different design. So we're cutting from one corner to the other diagonally through the repeating fabrics. And you do this on every block. There's some here first. That was a little bit off. Okay, through the repeating prints. Alright, so now I've got 4 pieces, 4 triangles. Now I want to flip these triangles. And you want to mismatch them. So I want the one circle to be higher than the other. So they come out like this. And then you just, well, let's back that up a little bit. Before we go there, we want to cut this segment out of the back. And you don't have to do this, but it reduces bulk if you do. The other thing is, if you do this, it's going to leave you another little piece, and I'm going to make another quilt out of this later. I'm going to cut this 4-patch layer from behind this circle to reduce bulk. Do that on every triangle. And again, like I said, you don't have to, but it'll reduce bulk in your quilt. And you end up with these cute little half circles that will be great in another quilt. I can't wait to figure out what to do with those. Half the work's already done in those. They've already been pieced. That'd be a really cute quilt. Okay. So then you end up with your circles like this. And again, we're going to flip them so that the blocks are misaligned. circles don't match up. That's how you want it. And you just flip these over facing each other, right sides together. And using a 1/4 inch seam, stitch them together. You can use pins to do this if you want to, I just don't. Do the other one, right sides together, lining up the block, 1/4 inch seam, and if you apply a little pressure on the 2 layers, it keeps them from shifting. And it keeps you from needing to pin. So then it's back to the ironing board. First press the seams to set the stitches. And then press it open. And it really doesn't matter which side you press them to because there's no matching at this point. When the blocks go together, there's a sashing between them and you really don't have to worry about seams matching or anything. All right, there's 2 finished blocks. Okay, so after that, you'll make as many of these blocks as you need, and in this quilt there's 42 blocks. And we put a 5.5 by 10 inch rectangle between the blocks, which is here, and used a 3.5 inch sashing. And with the sashing, I just cut as many as I needed to fit the quilt, and then I stacked them and cut them at different lengths, sewed them back together, and that gave me the piece sashing. Real easy. And I really like the way it turned out. So that is how you make the cattywompus quilt. I hope you enjoyed that, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. God bless.